Hey folks, tonight let's forget the movies, forget the speeches about honor and the gleaming armor that never gets a dent. We're going to talk about the real career of a Roman gladiator. You think it was about glory and freedom? That's adorable. The truth is, a gladiator's life was a filthy business, and the arena, that fancy amphitheater they call the Colosseum, was little more than a luxury slaughterhouse. It was there that the human livestock, trained at an exorbitant cost, was artistically carved up for the delight of a bored populace that, most of the time, couldn't even read the scoreboard of the death game. Get ready, because the famed glory of Rome, seen up close, had the strong stench of blood, sweat, and the timeline of a slaughterhouse disguised as sport. Before the first gate of the arena opens in our narrative, or before you realize that rooting for a football team is far less bloody, an invitation. Hit that like button and subscribe if you too have a morbid fascination with the uncomfortable. Truth behind history's great myths, especially here on The Boring Testament. And tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always fascinating to know who else is shirking their responsibilities, to listen to historical misery along with us. All right now, pull your favorite blanket up to your neck, adjust those headphones just right, maybe cover your eyes with that sleep mask, and let's together investigate the day-to-day life of a man whose worth was measured not by his virtues, but by his ability to bleed creatively for the delight of the crowd. Your entry into this world rarely began with a choice, be it for gambling debts that went terribly wrong, for being the nobody captured on the losing side of a war, or for simply being born with the luck of a three-legged cat. Your fate was the same. You've just been sold to a lanista, the entrepreneur, owner and talent manager of a gladiator school, the ludus. Think of him as a mix of a sports coach, a fight pimp, and the HR manager of a human butcher shop. Your new home isn't a palace with mosaics and fountains. It's a cell, a cramped space that smells of rancid sweat, fear, and the mildew of hopelessness, likely shared with other men who have lost even the will to stink properly. Your bed, a straw pallet that has seen more suffering than a church confessional. Your first day doesn't start with a welcome breakfast. It starts with a humiliating assessment. The lanista and the doctor, the head trainer, usually a crippled ex-gladiator who was lucky enough to survive, inspect you as if you were a piece of meat at the butcher's. They look at your teeth, if you still have them, feel your muscles, kick you in the shin to test your temper. They aren't looking for human potential. They're calculating the return on investment, the ROI of your future carnage. They are deciding if you're more valuable as an agile retiarius to die quickly, or a heavy mamillo to bleed a little slower. You don't get to pick your character class in this game. Your physique and the market's demand for new kinds of death decide for you. It's a macabre entrance exam, where being accepted means you're promising enough to die at a bigger event. And your diet? The famous gladiator porridge. A thick gruel of barley and beans that has the appearance and probably the taste of wet cement. The goal wasn't to make you healthy or happy. It was to make you fat. Yes, fat. A layer of fat over the muscles was excellent for the show. It protected vital organs from an immediate fatal blow and allowed for more superficial bloody cuts, which was what the crowd really wanted to see. Nobody paid to see a quick, efficient death. They wanted drama, agony, a good bloody spectacle. You weren't being fed. You were being prepared to be a more durable and visually juicy spectacle. The training was a daily hell, from sunrise to sunset. You didn't start with real weapons. That would be expensive and a risk to the lanista's assets. Instead, you swung wooden swords that weighed twice as much as steel ones so that your arms would ache to a level that made the very concept of pain beg for mercy. You would strike a wooden post, the palace, for hours on end, until your shoulders popped out of joint and went back into place out of sheer stubbornness. If you made a mistake, if you hesitated, The doctor's whip reminded you that the pain of training was just the appetizer for the pain of the arena. No days off, no sick leave for repetitive strain injury, and your colleagues, your new best friends, they were the same men who in a few weeks might try to shove a trident down your throat for a bit more bread and the chance to live one more day. There was a dark camaraderie, the brotherhood of the condemned, but everyone knew they were direct competitors in the deadliest reality show in history. As you threw yourself onto your straw pallet at the end of your first grueling day, your body in tatters, you finally understood. You were no longer a person. You were livestock, prime livestock, trained for slaughter, a commodity whose sole purpose was to die spectacularly so that some bored senator could applaud between a sip of wine and a belch. If you survived the first few months in the ludus without dying of exhaustion from an infection caused by a scratch or simply from sheer, overwhelming sadness, congratulations, you've been promoted from fresh livestock to livestock in intensive training. Now, the routine of pain and barley porridge intensifies. Your social life within this brotherhood of the condemned begins to take shape based on a brutal hierarchy. There are the veterans, the veterani, who have already survived a few fights and look at you with a mixture of pity and contempt. The rookies like you, the tirones, and those already on death row, the noxii, condemned to die in the arena with no chance of defense, often as a warm-up for your big show. The training with heavy wooden swords continues, but now you start having lessons with real weapons. The doctor, your charming trainer, teaches you how not to accidentally kill yourself with your own blade, which is a good start. You learn to use the shield not just to defend, but to push, to break your opponent's balance. You learn to aim for the weak spots in your adversary's armor, and they, in turn, learn to aim for yours. The sparring sessions are not friendly. They are auditions. The lanista watches from the shadows, calculating which pairings would be more interesting for the audience. A giant against a quick little guy, two cellmates forced to fight to the death. The potential for drama was always a factor when setting the event's card. The psychological tension before your first fight is perhaps worse than any physical training. You see your colleagues being taken to arenas in neighboring towns and, sometimes, not coming back. Fear starts to have a metallic taste, like the blood you've already spilled so many times in the training yard. The night before your debut in the sand is a hell of silence and racing thoughts. There are no inspirational speeches. Maybe a veteran gives you a cynical piece of advice. Die fast or kill fast. The in-between is what hurts the most. Or maybe no one says anything because words aren't worth much when death is such a real possibility on your next workday. And then the day comes. You are taken to the arena. It might not be the great Colosseum of Rome yet, perhaps a smaller wooden arena in a provincial city, but to you it feels like the center of the universe. The roar of the crowd is the first thing that hits you. A deafening roar, a wave of sound from thousands of people who paid to see you bleed. They don't know your name. They don't care about your story. You are just a piece in the day's entertainment, something to cheer for between a greasy chicken leg and a bet on the winner. You step onto the hot sand under the relentless sun. The dust, the smell of sweat, fear, and perhaps the blood from the previous fight. On the other side, your opponent, maybe the man you shared your hard bread with last night. There's no time to think about that. The gate closes, the trumpet sounds, and the fight for your life, your one and only true test, begins. Every move is instinct. The weight of the shield, the balance of the sword, the sound of your opponent's ragged breath, the roar of the crowd reacting to every blow, every feint, every drop of blood. It is a grotesque ballet, a macabre dance choreographed by pain and survival. Let's assume you're lucky. Or maybe skilled. You find an opening, your blow lands, your opponent falls. The crowd roars, some approving, others disappointed because it ended too quickly. The editor, the authority presiding over the games, gives the signal. You have survived. The body of your opponent, who until yesterday was your cellmate, is dragged out of the sand by men dressed as Karen, the ferryman of the underworld, with meat hooks. A touch of theatrical humor for a brutal finale. You are escorted back to the dark corridors beneath the arena. Your body is trembling with adrenaline and exhaustion. You are wounded but alive. And what do you get for this spectacular victory? A pat on the back? A medal of honor? No. You get the right to be treated by a doctor who will stitch your cut without anesthesia, using a dirty needle and a linen thread. You get an extra portion of that same barley porridge. And most importantly, you get the attention of your lanista, who now sees you not as livestock, but as a promising asset. An asset he can put up to fight again and again, until one day, luck or skill finally runs out. Your reward for surviving is simply the guarantee that you will have to face hell on earth one more time. If surviving your first fight in the arena was a miracle, surviving 10, 20 or more transformed you into something else entirely. You ceased to be just livestock for the slaughter and became a high-value asset. A star, an unlikely, idol in a world that at the same time it loved you, also despised you. Here at the Boring Testament, we're going to explore this gilded cage that was a gladiator's fame. Life in the ludus changed, but not by much. Maybe now you'd get an extra serving of that same barley porridge, or a piece of bread that wasn't hard enough to be used as a weapon. Maybe the doctor yelled a little less at you and a little more at the rookies, who looked at you with a mixture of admiration and dread, knowing that one day they might be the next victim on your resume. Your cell might be private now, a luxury. That only meant you could have your nightmares in peace without the snoring of your future opponent. The pressure, however, increased exponentially. Now, you didn't just fight for survival. You fought to meet expectations, to entertain a crowd that paid to see you. Outside the walls of the ludus, your name began to be whispered, and then scrawled. Children would scratch your name on alley walls. Tavern poets would compose crude verses about your victories, and to your surprise, you became the object of a strange personality cult. Women of Roman high society, bored with their senator husbands, could develop a morbid fascination with you, the brutal warrior, the exotic survivor. Some might pay to visit you at the ludus, a sort of dangerous and voyeuristic meet and greet, where they could get a whiff of danger without actually running any risks. You were a trophy, a dangerous fantasy for them. Financially, things improved, in theory. Victories in the arena could yield prize money, laurel wreaths, and gifts from wealthy admirers. You started to accumulate a small nest egg. But here's the irony of the system. You were still the property of your lanista. A large portion of your earnings went directly into his pocket. He was the one who paid your medical expenses. Stitching. Your wounds wasn't cheap. Your food, even the barley porridge, had a cost. And of course, he took a generous management fee for the privilege of keeping you alive and fighting. At the end of the day, you might be famous, but you were still a slave with good profit potential. Still, there was a light at the end of the tunnel, an almost unattainable dream for most. Freedom. An exceptionally skilled and popular gladiator, after years of service and survival, could receive the rudis, a symbolic wooden sword that signified his discharge and retirement from the arena. The crowd would roar in approval, the editor of the games would make a magnanimous gesture, and you would be free. But free for what? Many ex-gladiators, the rudiari, had nowhere to go. The world outside the arena was strange. They knew no other trade than fighting. Some became trainers, doctores, in the same ludus where they were once slaves, perpetuating the cycle of pain and training. Others with the fame and the money they managed to keep, might open a business or become bodyguards for some wealthy noble who appreciated having a professional killer on their payroll. But even when free, the brand of the arena never left. You, the scars, the memories, the social stigma, you would always be the one who was a gladiator, and this was the reality for the lucky few. The vast majority never got to see the Rudies. They met their end on the hot sand, under the applause of a crowd that would forget their names even before their bodies were dragged away. Fame, for a gladiator, was a bright candle in a storm. It shone intensely for a brief moment, but it was always just one breath away from being extinguished forever. And that was the truth behind the glory of Rome, a spectacle built on the desperate hope of men who fought for a freedom they almost never achieved. After months of training that turned your body into a map of aches and calluses, and your soul into a mix of resignation and contained fear, the day you both dreaded and perhaps secretly longed for finally arrives. Today, you will not strike a wooden post. Today, you go to the arena, and your journey to hell on earth begins with a parade, the pompa, a grand procession, a colourful farce designed to present the day's performers to the crowd, who are starving for entertainment. You march with the other gladiators, wearing embroidered robes and perhaps parade armour that is far more beautiful and infinitely more useless than what you will wear to fight. The crowd shouts, throws flowers, cheers for their favourites. It's a moment of bizarre glamour, the antechamber to the carnage, where the men who are about to kill each other are applauded as heroes. You, of course, maintain a neutral expression, your gaze fixed forward, ignoring the faces in the crowd who see you not as a man, but as a good bet for the next fight. But your big moment has not yet arrived. The Roman Games were an all-day event, a full menu of brutality, and the gladiator fights were the main course, served in the afternoon. The morning was reserved for the appetizers. First, the venaciones, the animal hunts, exotic beasts, imported from the farthest corners of the empire at a staggering cost. Lions, bears, leopards, rhinos were released into the arena to fight each other or armed hunters, the bestiarii. It was a spectacle of savagery, a demonstration of Rome's power over nature. For the people, it was thrilling. For the animals, it was a nightmare of confusion and death. After the wildlife show came the midday entertainment, usually the favorite. A moment for the more sadistic attendees. The public executions, the noxii, criminals, prisoners of war, and Christians in certain eras were brought into the arena to die in the most creative and humiliating ways possible. Burned alive, crucified, or simply thrown unarmed to the beasts that had survived the morning's spectacle. The crowd watched it all, eating their snacks, commenting on the performance. The calm revolt we feel when imagining these scenes is the realization that death as entertainment was not an aberration. It was the norm, the gold standard of Roman leisure. And you, waiting in the dark corridors beneath the arena, heard the roars of the lions and the screams of the condemned, knowing that all of it was just the warm-up for your turn. Finally, the afternoon arrives. It is time for the munera, the duty, the gift of the gladiators to the people. You are led to the gates. You hear your name or your type announced. The trumpet sounds, the gate opens, and the blinding light of the arena momentarily dazzles you. The roar of the crowd intensifies. On the other side, your opponent, perhaps a retiarius with his net and trident, light and deadly. And you, a secutor with your heavy helmet that limits your vision and hearing, but protects your face. The fight begins. There is no epic soundtrack, only the sound of metal on metal, the shuffle of feet on the sand, your own ragged breath inside, the stuffy helmet, and the incessant noise of a crowd thirsty for action. Every move is a calculation of life and death. You advance, he retreats. He casts the net, you dodge it by a hair's breadth. His trident scrapes against your shield, the metallic sound echoing in your ears. You press him against the arena wall, looking for an opening. The crowd reacts to every blow. They shout, they boo, they bet on who will bleed first. You are no longer a person. You are a piece in a bloody chess game, and the entire audience is your opponent, rooting not for you, but for the spectacle of your struggle. The combat is fast and brutal. A moment of distraction, a false step, and it could all be over. But today, luck, or perhaps your brutal training, is on your side. You manage to trap his trident with your shield, disarm him with a strike of your sword, and he falls to the sand, wounded, at your mercy. The crowd erupts. The moment of judgment has arrived. You, the victor, stand panting over your defeated opponent. Your arm aches, your body hurts, but you raise your face toward the box of the editor, the magistrate presiding over the games. The fate of the man on the ground is no longer in your hands, nor in his. It is in the hands of the crowd, and the final decision of that nobleman. The fallen opponent might raise a finger, begging for mercy, and the crowd reacts. Thumbs up, thumbs down. History and cinema debate the exact gesture, but the meaning was clear. And you, the gladiator, are merely the instrument of their will. Let's suppose the editor, influenced by the crowd's roar or his own whim, gives the signal to spare. The crowd applauds the mercy. The opponent is removed, perhaps to fight another day. If the signal is for death, even your reward for surviving another day in the arena, for not being the one whose body was dragged across the sand with meat hooks, is simply the guarantee that you will have to face hell on earth once again. But what happens in the mind of a man who lives by this macabre repetition, who makes death his daily routine and the roar of the crowd his soundtrack? The psychology of a gladiator who survives is a territory even darker than the Colosseum itself. Your nervous system, after months or years of combat, lives on high alert, like a faulty car alarm that never shuts off. Every shadow is a threat, every loud noise an imminent attack. You develop a bizarre relationship with the crowd. They adore you, chant your name, maybe even buy small clay figurines of your likeness. You are the poster on the Roman teenager's bedroom wall, and at the same time, the social refuse no one wants to touch, the person no good family would allow their daughter to marry. You are a living paradox, a slave celebrated as a god, a hero with no right to his own life. To cope with this existential schizophrenia, you cling to rituals, to superstitions, maybe an amulet you hide in your loincloth, a silent prayer to a forgotten god from your homeland before entering the arena, a specific way of gripping your sword. Anything to give an illusion of control in a life where you control absolutely nothing, not even the type of weapon you will likely die with. You trust no one completely, not even your cellmates, because friendship in the ludus is always a temporary alliance, waiting to be dissolved by the announcement of the next match. And time passes. If you are lucky or unlucky enough to keep winning, your body starts to demand payment. Your primary tool of the trade, begins to fail. Your knees creak louder than the rusted gates of the arena. Your dozens of scars ache when the weather changes. And the speed that saved you so many times now belongs to the younger, hungrier boys arriving at the ludus. They look at you with admiration, yes, but also as if you are the final boss before the glory. Your lanista, who once saw you as a promising asset, now looks at you with the coldness of an accountant. Your maintenance cost, food, doctors, is beginning to outweigh your profit potential. The fear changes. It's no longer just fear of the opponent, but fear of becoming obsolete, of being sent into one final hopeless fight just to clear out the stock. Your relationship with death becomes intimate. You see it every week. You see your friends and rivals fall on the sand. You learn the smell, the sound, the texture of death. It ceases to be an abstract concept and becomes an inconvenient and very punctual co-worker. Upon entering the ludus, you took the gladiator's oath. Uri, vinciri, verberari, feroce necari. I will endure to be burned, to be bound, to be beaten, and to be killed by the sword. Basically, the terms of service you accept for the worst job in the world, a contract you sign with your own body. With time, death perhaps doesn't frighten you as much as the humiliation of a bad performance. And herein lies the great, tragic irony of your life. You, the gladiator, the ultimate symbol of Roman strength and brutality, become the personification of powerlessness. Your life is not your own. Your death is not your own. Your fleeting glory belongs to the crowd. Your body belongs to your lanista. Your story will be told by others, who will probably get your name wrong and exaggerate your deeds to sell more tickets for the next games. In the end, our calm revolt, as we look back at the figure of the gladiator, is not just about the violence. It's about the perversion of everything. Courage turned into spectacle, suffering into entertainment, human life into a commodity. Roman society, which gave us law, architecture, and philosophy, also built its most magnificent monuments as stages for organized human slaughter, and called it culture. The ashes of the anonymous gladiators were blown away by the wind long ago, but their image, polished and distorted by Hollywood, remains. A myth of heroism that hides a truth of brutal exploitation. In the end, the greatest arena wasn't the Colosseum. It was the mind of each gladiator, a silent stage of fear, pride, trauma, and memories that the sand could never fully absorb. And it is these invisible scars, perhaps, that are the only legacy that truly belonged to them.